Hi there, in this video we're going to run through the basic e-commerce framework in terms of how the different areas of the e-commerce space interact with one another, and this should hopefully give you a good reference point and framework to come back to in terms of if you're looking to achieve a certain outcome in your business, what are the levers that you have to work on to drive that outcome in your business. I believe from my personal perspective that the majority of e-commerce brands will fit into this framework. Obviously, there are always outliers, but I'd say that this will apply to most e-commerce brands out there, and this should hopefully give you, again, a good point of reference in terms of potentially troubleshooting bottlenecks in your business, isolating areas that you could potentially leverage and lean on further to obviously grow and put your business in a better position overall. So diving straight into this, we've got two main aspects to business revenue: acquisition and retention. Acquisition is new customer sales or new customer revenue. Retention is revenue from existing customers. In terms of majority of business investment, this will generally go into acquisition. Obviously, you will invest time, energy, etc. into retention, but the majority of business investment will go into acquisition, and you either get a direct return from those customers that you acquire on first purchase, or as you can see here via this little diagram, retention is fueled by acquisition. You can't scale retention without acquiring those customers first. If you haven't acquired the new customers, there are no customers to come back and buy again. So retention is fueled by acquisition, and obviously that gives a return to overall business revenue. Then following that, in terms of the 5 levers that we have in terms of acquisition, and then the 4 in terms of retention. Starting with acquisition, one key aspect to be cognizant of when kind of getting into the e-commerce space is what type of business do you operate? Do you operate, or are you selling a repeat purchase product, or are you selling a product that people will realistically buy once and not really buy again in the foreseeable future? Quick example of this: skincare versus furniture. If someone buys a skincare product and they like that, they will use that product up and have to buy that same product again and again and again as they use it up over time. A furniture product they will realistically buy once, and they won't really buy that same product again because obviously they have a dining table, a couch, etc. And knowing what type of business you're running impacts how you structure your acquisition. For example, if you're running a skincare brand that has a high repeat purchase aspect to their product or business model, you can potentially lose money on your first purchase and then rely on returning customer revenue to refund or fund that first customer purchase loss. However, with a furniture brand, customers are not going to come back and buy again realistically, so you need to ensure that you maximize profitability on that first purchase to obviously make all of your profit on that first customer purchase. Then the second aspect of acquisition is the product, or I like to call it customer ROI, or the value proposition that you essentially give the customer. Ultimately, the only reason why a customer will buy from you is that they expect to receive an ROI on their investment. So obviously they're investing their time and their money into your product, and they expect that product to give them an ROI on their life in some way, whether that's solving a problem, fixing a pain point, etc. And obviously those two factors, solving a problem or fixing a pain point, could come in many different forms. Is it increasing that customer's status, or is it increasing that customer's enjoyment out of life if it's a product relating to hobbies, etc.? It's a very broad concept to think about, but ultimately the customer is coming to you and buying your product with the expectation that it'll give them an ROI on their time and money investment. And that is essentially product market fit. Do you have a product that is needed by a certain market of customers? Now, to help improve that expected or anticipated return on investment, you can essentially leverage reviews and testimonials. This is essentially a way of showing how past customers saw a return on their investment, and increases the trust or the likelihood that a new customer that hasn't bought from you before will see that same return on their investment. And that comes down again to, specifically in my opinion, the product itself. Does the product solve a problem, and is that product needed by a specific market of people? Then third on this list is offer structure. So I've included a basic formula from Alex Hormozy, and this is Alex Hormozy's, I guess, offer value formula, where you have dream outcome and perceived likelihood of achievement of that dream outcome on top, and then time, delay, and effort and sacrifice on the bottom. So how can we increase or I guess tailor the pitch of the product to the customer so that it aligns with their dream outcome as closely as possible? And then how do we increase the perceived likelihood of achievement of that dream outcome? And then on the other side, how do we decrease the amount of time that it takes for that customer to see their dream outcome? And how do we decrease the amount of effort and sacrifice that the customer has to make to actually achieve that dream outcome? So to think of an example off the top of my head, in the furniture scenario, the dream outcome of a middle-aged wife, let's say, is to have a large dining table in her home that she can seat her entire family and extended family around in a, I guess, spacious manner to all have a really good time at home together. We could obviously align the pitch of the product to that potential demographic to align with their dream outcome and show that the features of this product align with her dream outcome and therefore increase the perceived likelihood of achievement for her to achieve that dream outcome, because the product specs, etc., align with what she's looking for in that dream outcome. On the other side, decreasing time, delay, and effort and sacrifice. How long does it take for the product to be delivered, installed, set up, etc.? Will the customer need to, let's say, get an installer to move this big heavy product into her living room, assemble it, etc.? How much effort and sacrifice will be needed from her side to actually achieve that dream outcome? So again, very basic example, but I definitely think that this framework and this mindset is a good one to keep in mind whenever you are trying to, I guess, tailor a pitch of your product to a customer through a product page, an ad, etc. Then fourth on this list is customer experience, and this is obviously before they purchase. So I'd say this is broken down into two aspects: website experience and then customer service. Website experience, can they access the info that they need to make an informed decision of whether this product will suit them or not? If they have any questions, is the customer service team on it in terms of providing that customer with whatever info or service they need prior to making that purchase? Then lastly, in terms of acquisition, is obviously marketing. We can have a great customer experience, great offer, great product, suitable business, etc. But if no one knows that we exist, obviously we will not get sales. And from an e-commerce perspective, I believe there are four main, I guess, buckets of marketing for e-com stores. First being paid ads. This is the most direct and, I guess, most easily accessible form of marketing for e-commerce brands. And obviously that's where I specialize in terms of paid ads and driving potential buyers to the store. That is the goal of any marketing exercise, is to drive quality traffic, so drive potential buyers to the store to potentially buy your product. So that can be done through paid ads, Google, Meta, TikTok, etc., or organic social presence. For example, an influencer that has a huge social following on the social media platforms, you could pair with influencers, so through influencer marketing. So if your product is suited to a certain demographic of influencer, partnering with that influencer, they promote your product and drive their audience to your store to potentially buy your product. And then the last being SEO. This is more of a long-term play, but improving the site's relevance within the search results to essentially outcompete other brands within that same niche to drive more users and more potential buyers to your store to potentially buy your product. So that's my view on acquisition. Heading over to the retention side. Again, retention is a big factor of, or what you get out of retention is heavily influenced by the type of business or product that you sell. Just the same with acquisition. If you have a repeat purchase product, you naturally will have a lot more returning customer revenue than a single purchase brand like furniture, etc., where the customer realistically is only going to buy once from you. So good retention style businesses would be repeat purchase or consumable products like food items, skincare, hair care, clothing to a large degree, and then any sort of wholesale B2B trade style business where you acquire that trade customer and then they buy from you multiple times as they service different clients on their side. The second aspect to retention is the product catalog. So something that is good to keep in mind as well, especially when introducing new products into your catalog on your store, is this a complementary product to an acquisition style product? So for example, if you're selling a machine of some sort, do you sell the spare parts and the maintenance parts for that machine? Obviously, the retention or returning customer revenue that you'll see through your business and through certain products will also be a factor of what type of product they are. Is it a product that people will buy on their first purchase, or will it be a complementary product to something that customer bought on their first purchase? So for example, let's say if the customer is buying an outdoor piece of furniture, if we were to do an additional product launch or looking to build out the catalog that we're stocking, we might want to stock a complementary product to that primary product. So again, if we were selling a piece of outdoor furniture, we might want to stock a cover for that piece of outdoor furniture, or a cleaning product for that piece of outdoor furniture, etc., etc. So those would be complementary products to that primary product. Or in the machine example, selling spare parts to that machine that the customer would have bought on their first purchase. So in terms of product launches, you could build out your catalog in terms of new customer acquisition products. So let's say bringing in a completely new machine or a completely new piece of outdoor furniture, etc. Or you could introduce complementary products that people will buy later on after purchasing that first product, which would be the cover, the parts, etc. Then another huge factor, in my opinion, in terms of customer retention is, did they see an ROI on their first purchase? And I think this is essential in terms of long-term customer retention. Obviously, we built up all this hype and trust with the customer through reviews, testimonials, etc. And the customer crossed the line, bought your product, and now they're deciding whether to buy again or not. If they had a terrible customer experience and the product wasn't effective and it was poor quality, the likelihood of them purchasing again, no matter how much marketing and how many emails you send them, is very low. On the other hand, if the product quality was great, the product effectiveness was really good, the customer saw a great ROI in their life on their first purchase, customer service was excellent, no matter how many emails or ads they see down the line, the likelihood of them purchasing from you again, if they run into that same problem again, is highly likely because they've had a positive experience with you already. That, in my opinion, is a huge factor in terms of retention as well. And then digital retention strategies. So 3 main factors to this: email marketing, organic socials, and then paid ads. Email marketing, in my opinion, is the most effective way to keep on top of that existing audience that you've acquired through your acquisition channels, because it's free. You're not paying anyone to reach your existing audience that you've acquired. The same with organic socials. If someone's purchased from you, the likelihood of them getting served a organic social post in their feed and the likelihood of them, following or interacting with your social media account is quite high. And therefore, I believe that these are the 2 most effective and best ROI channels for keeping existing customers engaged with your business. There is a lot of debate around whether you spend on existing customers or not through paid ads. In my opinion, you shouldn't spend anything on paid ads in terms of your existing customers, because if you do the email side and organic social side properly, this should be more than enough coverage in terms of your existing customers to keep those people engaged. You don't need to invest further budget into retargeting those existing customers. This is different, as I've mentioned here, for larger brands, for example, clothing, where they're doing lots of product launches and there's lots going on with the business itself. A lot of times customers can get kind of lost in terms of how much is going on with this business, and therefore paid ads is a good way to ensure that that existing customer audience is kept up to date with what's happening within that business model. But for the most part, I'd actually recommend removing that from the overall retention strategy and rather putting that budget into the acquisition side and acquiring new customers to essentially feed the retention side. So this should hopefully have given you a good overview in terms of the overall e-commerce structure. This framework can kind of be overlaid across in my opinion, most e-commerce businesses. And then you can essentially start leveraging more in-depth resources to answer certain questions within each of these different areas. A good, easy example of this is, for example, can we lose money on first purchase while still breaking even in the long run because we can rely on that repeat purchase revenue? For example, in the profit tracker that I built for myself and my clients here, a cohort analysis is a good example of that. So in this case, for the most part, the client is breaking even on their first purchase. So the customer acquisition cost is less than the profit contribution that that customer makes on first order. But if, for example, the customer acquisition cost was higher than that first purchase contribution profit, how many months of customers coming back will it take to essentially make back that loss that the client or the business took on that first order? So again, just to kind of relay this to a real world scenario, this framework can be overlaid across any e-commerce business, and then more in-depth resources can better be put into context within this framework, like, for example, that cohort analysis that I just showed you. So hopefully this was helpful. And if you have any suggestions or additions to anything I've mentioned here, please leave those in the comments below. Obviously, there are a huge number of factors in this whole ecosystem, so would be interested to hear if I've missed anything in this breakdown.